Welcome everyone, Costin here with my minor god tier list for Age of Mythology Retold. There's quite a few gods to cover, though of course it has to be said that the decision of a minor god is going to come down to the particular match, the particular map that you're on, the major gods that each player does have. So bear in mind, because there are certain gods that are going to be S tier on this particular list, that in a particular situation would be F tier. And then there's gods that in F tier would do very, very well. So just keep that aspect in mind. So starting with the Greeks, Ares. I think Ares is an A tier. Doesn't quite make the cut as an S tier minor god, but certainly a really good choice. Cyclops, not necessarily the best myth units in the world, but the fact that you do get high pass bits, the fact that you do get various damage upgrades is very, very useful with Ares. It does give you a lot of flexibility, a lot more flexibility in the army that you can build, and those high pacifists that can pretty much win against any other tier 2 infantry in the game is a fairly significant boon. His god power, not necessarily all that great. His Cyclops, there are better myth units out there, but absolutely the upgrades that he does have, especially in a longer game or a tier 3 game, are going to be very useful. So if you're looking to get Ares, you're mainly getting him for the kind of benefits, upgrade benefits that you will have, as opposed to just raw power. Though certainly Cyclops, again, they can get the job done, but just as I said, there's better myth units that are out there. Athena, S tier, easy S tier. In the largest number of situations, Athena is going to be useful. See, Ares might be useful with his god power on the offense to slow down enemy recruitment, though very situational there. Whereas healing is going to be extremely useful in either offense or defense. And while Athena doesn't have the same kind of upgrades that Ares has, she does certainly help your hoplites a lot, in particular when you combine those hoplites with Greek heroes and the Minotaurs that Athena has. So either using her defensively or offensively is going to work quite well. Minotaurs are one of the best tier 2 myth units that are available in the game, because between their resources, their durability, especially if you're going with Hades, between their durability, their combat power, their cost, and the resources they cost, they can be quite very useful to get in many, many matchups. So between Ares and Athena, I would generally go with Athena, unless there's certain situations where Ares might make more sense. In particular, if you're going Hades and you want to go with archer spamming, the kind of archer upgrade that Ares does have is going to be especially useful. Then we have Hermes. Hermes, I would say, is either a C or D tier god. I think I'm going to say C. So on one hand, his god power is extremely situational to use. Very much so. There are times when you can absolutely take advantage of ceasefire, either both defensively to prevent the enemy from attacking you, or even offensively to get your units into a great position between yourself and the enemy, as opposed to, say, having to approach a line of defenses, or giving you flexibility, to just put some units under gatherers without having to worry about the enemy. It can really cause a lot of havoc. Centaurs, great harassing units. So if you're going with Hermes, you're getting cavalry benefits, and you do have a really good range unit. Centaurs are probably one of the better range units in the game because of their mobility, and they're a good amount of damage. They're great in large-scale fights, early on or later on, but situational. If you're looking to do harass, if you're looking to get some map control, can be useful, but not quite the same level of power that either Ares or Athena do give you. In tier 3, we have Dionysus. I think I'm going to put Dionysus in C tier. And let me explain. Bronze is a very powerful god power. Undeniably so. His cavalry upgrade, pretty solid. So if you're doing a lot of harassing around the map, or if you're playing a team game, keep in mind this list is for 1v1 games. But if you're doing a lot of cavalry harass, if you're looking for map control, Dionysus can be great from that perspective. However, let me say this. While bronze is powerful, especially now that it works on myth units, Hydras can be good in multiplayer, but they can also be complete trash. Because yes, they do a lot of damage, but they're also slow. And any decent kind of opponent will understand that, yeah, you try not to engage the Hydras directly. You use range units, range heroes, if you have them, to deal with them. You harass, you run around in circles around them. Yes, they have HP regeneration, and while Hydras are absolutely a powerful unit for the sake of single player and skirmish, for multiplayer, again, a competent player will know how to deal with them. And they're also really expensive, just keep that aspect in mind. Like, expenses do matter. In particular, once you get to tier 3 and you're looking to get to tier 4, you're looking to build your economy, you're probably not going to have that much money to get a lot of Hydras. So just keep that aspect in mind. Aphrodite. This is a bit of an interesting one. So her god power is great on both offense and defense. So is Bronze, don't get me wrong. Nemean Lions, though, holy shit, are Nemean Lions crazy. Not the most durable of myth units, not the fastest either. But when they do engage the enemy with their roar, like just being able to stun the entire enemy army with a single freaking unit or a significant portion of the enemy army, that is a ridiculous level of power. Like, that genuinely can win you fights on your own. So maybe you could consider even Aphrodite a bit higher than that. Curse disables a portion of the enemy army. On top of that, you do gain roughly a 10% economic benefit if you go with Aphrodite. So I might even consider Aphrodite like a higher tier, like an A-tier god. Like, yeah, the Nemean Lion, the economic benefits, the god power, they do end up working quite well. I am trying to be a bit careful over here with the Greek gods because I don't want to rate them higher than they deserve, because obviously we do have other civilizations over here. But yeah, Aphrodite is a great choice of a god in tier 3. Lots of flexibility with her defensive and offensive benefits with myth units with god power, and that economic benefit is nothing to joke about. Apollo. Apollo is, I'm not gonna lie, I think I'm gonna put him in C tier. Underworld Passage is a powerful ability. Undeniably so. The healing that Apollo gives you is a very powerful ability. Absolutely. Through your temples. Manticores can be useful, but they're a bit slow, they're expensive, and they're kind of squishy. That's one of the problems with them. They can do a lot of damage in a prolonged fight, but they are slow, so can be something of an issue with using them. So that's the reason I rank him a bit more lower. It's a very situational perspective on Apollo, because there are times when he can be a game winner for you, and then there's times when, oh, you get Underworld Passage. Okay, is that really going to be that important for me in the match? Maybe. Might be. You can also use Underworld Passage a bit defensively. Why do I say that? Because you can use Underworld Passage. Like, let's just say you have a bunch of villagers, they're gathering some food or wood on other portions of the map, right? And Underworld Passage can allow you to just get those villagers out of a sticky situation if the enemy finds them, if they're raiding you. Can be particularly powerful from that perspective. It is important, but very situational over there with Apollo. So general purpose gods that you would want to pick many times, those are higher ranked. Situational gods, lower ranked. That's where I stand. Artemis as a tier 4 god. Well, on one hand, I think she has the single best myth unit of the Greeks, Chimeras. They do a lot of AoE damage, they're good in single combat, their movement speed is pretty okay, their cost is not absurd for what they offer. On top of that, her Earthquake ability is severely damaging to enemy bases. So Artemis, either A or B. So I think I'm going to put Artemis in A, though I might have to revise this as I get to other civilizations, but yeah, for now I think I'm going to go with A. Hephaestus, easy S tier. Like, you can't go wrong going with Hephaestus. While he may not offer you the same kind of tangible benefits other gods, or a game-ending ability like Earthquake, Hephaestus gives you a lot of money, saves you a lot of money, and grants you better elite units as any of the Greeks. So if you're looking to play a long game as the Greeks, you want to go Hephaestus. Even in a short game, the fact that, say for instance, you're looking to do an early game tier 4, right? You want to push for tier 4 as quickly as possible. That means you may not have armory upgrades, but Hephaestus has an upgrade in the armory, exclusive to him, that reduces the cost of all other upgrades by an enormous amount. So you can just boom to tier 4 as the Greeks. Don't get any armor upgrades, or let's say get the tier 1 upgrades, the first set of upgrades rather. Okay, but not the second set, not the higher sets. Save that money, and then, save that money, and then get his unique upgrade, and get a significant amount of power very, very cheaply once you get to him. Colossi, not the best unit in the world, but they're pretty good tanks. But expensive, undeniably so. Slow, very slow. Yeah, you can combine it with Underworld Passage, absolutely, in that case. But from my perspective, the benefit of Hephaestus is the benefit it gives you to your elite units, the armory upgrades, the raw money, not necessarily the Colossi. But the economic benefits are pretty much unmatched in the game. Like, for a minor god, he is by far the best from an economic perspective, unmatched. And the fact that you can now reuse Plenty Vault is pretty damn powerful, especially because of the way Greeks gain favor. So Greeks, I think, have the capability of earning more favor than anyone else, really, in the game, because you can always task more villagers. Sure, you have to make that trade-off, but with Hephaestus, the nice benefit of that situation is, I get a Plenty Vault, I can ask more villagers from other resources on favor and still have the same income, and then I can recast Plenty Vault. That is power. That is a significant level of power. Hera, I think Hera is going to be a B tier. Let me explain. Medusa are a situational myth unit. Absolutely situational. In some cases, if you're dealing with really powerful units, really powerful myth units, and you want to disable them, extremely powerful unit. Other situations, not so much, I would dare say. The free Myrmidons, you are sacrificing the power that Hephaestus does give you. 4 units for free from fortresses, but you got to build those fortresses, so just keep that aspect in mind. Lightning Storm, it takes a while to ramp up. So I kind of think like Lightning Storm actually has gotten a bit of a nerf. Like, it's a really powerful ability if you let it strike, but the fact that it takes time to ramp up means that enemies can just freaking run away from it, potentially. Can be extremely powerful in certain situations, dependent on the enemy you're dealing with. But, like, I would generally say, like, obviously you don't have the dilemma between Artemis and Hera, but you do have the dilemma between Hephaestus and Hera. And I would say there's far more situations where Hephaestus is going to be more useful. Though, if you want a god that might give you that advantage that as soon as you get to the myth age you might win the game, Hera can do that, though I would say less so than Artemis. That would be my perspective on that. Let's move on. Moving on to the Egyptian, we start with Bast. Bast, I think, is an A-tier god. The reason I would say she's an A-tier god, Eclipse is a really strong ability. It grants you extra favor from monuments. It supercharges your myth units, and all Egyptians may not necessarily have the single best myth units in the game. They do have some capable ones at the very least, and just increasing their capabilities in combat is a significant benefit. The reason she's not S tier is that her upgrades kind of leave something to be desired. Oh, your farm workers can work 10% faster. Okay, for Egypt, which is already an economic powerhouse in a lot of ways, largely because they don't need that much wood, they don't need it for structures, they only need it for upgrades, and they need it for units. Still, farm and wood upgrades, not necessarily the most beneficial ones. Certainly strong economic benefits, and would be S tier for other civilizations, but not necessarily for Egypt. But absolutely a god that a lot of the times you want to go with. And by the way, I regret that this tier list has the beta icons, because she looks so silly in this. Much better in the final version, though. Fa, F tier. Like, I'm not even discussing this. Shifting Sands might be situational in certain scenarios, but his upgrades are trash, not really that great. And yes, Shifting Sands, again, just very, very situational. And the myth unit he has, I think it's the worst myth unit in the freaking game. Its Wadgets are okay, but they're crap as well. Like, you put a hero against a Wadget, like, the Wadget doesn't do enough damage, has zilch for durability, which is actually quite important for myth units. Like, ranged myth units can have a problem with durability, but the Wadgets, unlike say Centaurs, don't have the speed, they don't have the durability of others, and combine that with the lackluster upgrades. Oh, he's buffing Slingers, Spearmen, and Axemen. Okay. Even Asset, by the way, who gets a barracks benefit, like that might be useful to a certain extent, but I'm gonna say it. Set is not powerful because he gets better barracks units. No, Set is powerful because of Migdal strongholds and other things as well that he does have going, and his counting ability. So yeah, Fob is kind of like a god that you just flat want to avoid if you can. Very few situations where you might go with Fa as opposed to the other options that you do have available. Anubis, S tier. Easy S tier. The fact that you get a fairly good myth unit, not the most durable, but here's the thing. Anobites, decently fast for a tier 2 unit. Keep that in mind. Not tier 3, decently fast. Really capable of jumping into combat, doing a lot of damage, disengaging, getting healed, doing that again. Because that's the thing about Egyptians. You do have healing, a lot of it. So while your myth units may not be the most durable, the fact that Anobites can do a truckload of damage against a lot of armies, disengage before things get dicey for them, and then engage. They can raid, they can engage in combat, they're not so expensive, the fact you get extra favor, really, really solid choice. Like, Anubis is an easy F tier, an easy S tier. Like, there's a reason when you play a campaign in this, and not just the campaign, but I think the campaign situation that a lot of us experience firsthand, there's a reason these guys give you a hell of a time. And keep in mind, in multiplayer, we don't have the overpowered heroes they have in the campaign. So, yeah, Anubites, really great choice of a unit to use. Can be a bit of a glass cannon, but at least they have the cannon part. Unlike, say, other things like from this guy right here. Sekhmet. This is an interesting one. So I think Sekhmet is very situational. Absolutely, like the Scarab she has, really powerful units. The really durable units, great in siege. Hell of a nightmare to deal with in certain scenarios. Great defensive benefits, just overall a solid choice. In certain situations, keep in mind that. It's going to be situational, but where you do have her, she can be a game changer for you, either on defense or offense. Kind of, I'm placing her on the same tier as Hera, because she does give you certain benefits in certain situations, but not all situations. Nephthys, or however you pronounce her, interesting one to think about. So I think she's an A tier. The fact that you have the ability of summoning dead, which can literally turn the tide of the battle for you in quite a few situations. So upgrades, pretty strong, get the job done. Like, just a very solid god for a lot of situations. Not quite the craziest out there. She does have some problems, absolutely. Like, or rather, not problems, I would dare say, but she's not quite as ridiculous as some of the other ones that are available. But still, very solid choice, gets the job done, gives you tangible benefits that you will want to use. So really solid choice in a lot of situations. Not all of them, but great in a lot of scenarios. Sobek, aka Hathor. Yeah, this one is an easy. So with Sobek, this one is an easy S tier. Like, just the fact that you get rocks from him is a very powerful benefit. Because some god powers give you math flexibility. Having flying transport flexibility is freaking bananas. Combine that with his laser crocodiles, you start to understand why this guy is crazy. Yeah, some issues, of course, as with some of the others, but all the same, like, it's hard to go wrong with Hathor in an enormous amount of situations. Osiris. This is crazy. I think Osiris is either an S tier or an A tier. I'm going to put him in A. I don't think he necessarily makes the S tier cut, though I am very tempted. Or maybe he does make the S tier cut. Kind of hard to say. So here's my perspective on this with regards to Osiris. Mummies, yeah, I think he's an S tier one. Mummies are incredibly powerful units in Retold compared to how they were before. Like, before they were kind of a joke. Now they are actually really good. The amount of damage they can do in a battle, like, they're slow, sure, and that is a problem. But they're slow as a range unit. And funnily enough, they don't cost necessarily as much as some other range units, but they get the job done. But we do, obviously, when we're thinking about Osiris, we got to talk about the Son of Osiris. Now, here's the thing about Osiris. Obviously, Set doesn't have him, but you do have him as Isis. You do sacrifice an offensive god power to get him, like Meteor, for instance, to be able to get Osiris. But the Son of Osiris, if used properly, can literally win you the game. Like, there is virtually no scenario in which the Son of Osiris is not great. He's amazing on defense. He's amazing on offense. He's slow, so don't try and chase down units that can then surround you and kill him. That is the problem. He can be targeted, but he can be healed, at the very least in the current version. He can be healed in Migdal strongholds or town centers if you garrison them. You can't heal him directly on the field, but you can heal him in buildings. And you can reuse it. Like, before Retold, I would have said, like, yeah, sometimes the Son of Osiris can be used. But now with reusable god powers, holy shit. And it's not like the Son of Osiris is an incredibly expensive god power. Unlike, say, many other god powers that are ridiculously expensive to reuse. The Son of Osiris is rather on, quote-unquote, the cheap side for a tier 4 god power. Horus can help you out in certain situations. Tornado can win you the game in certain scenarios. Powerful in that situation, but yeah, I think, like, it's a situational perspective. Also, yeah, his Retold portrait is a joke. Ridiculous looking. Avengers, pretty strong myth units, but kind of vulnerable as well. Like, if I were to choose between mummies and Avengers, I think I would pick mummies. That would be my perspective. And then finally, Fat, I think he's an A tier 1. Meteor is a powerful power. Phoenix is not so great as a unit. He would have been an easy S tier before, but Valley of Kings went from a ridiculous construction benefit that basically meant you could spam instantly units from Migdal Stronghold to full population as long as you had the resources. It kind of got nerfed. You can still get a lot of units through him, but yeah, it kind of got nerfed. You do get an economic benefit, so that's undeniable power. But, you know, certain situations, Meteor can win you the game. He does give you a tangible benefit in terms of long game as well, but not quite the crazy power some others give you. Getting to the Atlanteans, we start with Prometheus, who I think he's D tier. He's not horrible. He's not the god that you wouldn't ever not want to use, but he's also limited. Prometheans are better in Retold than they were in the original version. However, the Valor change can give you some benefits, in particular healing a unit, and it is a cheap ability to use, but it does have its limitations. Keep that aspect in mind. Can be a bit of a early game boost, but it does lose its value relatively quickly after that. I mean, you would want to get him sometimes if you do just want that early game benefit, but also sometimes you might just say, screw it, I'm not bothering with it. Like, that's my view with Prometheus. Sometimes you would want to use him, other times you would not want to care about it. But at least you would use him, unlike Leto, who... Automatons are a joke of a unit. Let's just put it as simply as that. Like, I think they really need some... Oh, but they can repair themselves. Okay, that might apply if there weren't much better myth units, and if there weren't civilizations that had a lot of healing available to them. And also, by the way, Atlanteans do have healing available to them, so it's like, who gives a damn? Like, automatons are not worth it. They're not great in combat. They don't have durability. They don't have damage. They're not worth recruiting. And Leto doesn't even have anything else that can really work in her favor in terms of upgrades or even really her god power. At least Prometheus has some benefits, absolutely, that you can use, but extremely, extremely situational in that respect. Oceanus, S tier. Let me explain. You get healing for this guy. You get healing units on both sea and land. For sea, this is incredible. You also get the Carnivora, which is decently enough for defensive purposes, but most importantly for Oceanus, he, 1, allows your infantry to become heroes cheaper. 2, he buffs more Murmillos, which are a general purpose unit in Retold as opposed to what they were in the original version. And he buffs your Fanatics. So if you're looking to play a short game, a tier 2 game, Atlanteans do have a problem with like their tier 2 in particular, right? A lot of their good units are in tier 3. Egyptians have the same issue as well. Don't get me wrong that. But Oceanus makes your tier 2 better. He gives you that defensive benefit. And he gives you a long-term benefit as well. So yeah, great choice. And yeah, the healing benefit that he provides is really, really solid as well. For the Atlantean tier 3, we do have Hyperion. Hyperion is a great choice. He helps your heroes out. He has a really powerful ranged myth unit that does a lot of damage. Slow, like a lot of ranged myth units actually are. But I think he's a really solid B tier. Not really anything horrible to say, but he doesn't quite make the cut from my perspective in A tier. But pretty solid choice all around. Gets the job done. Fairly strong. Fairly capable. Rhea. Situational. Great in terms of siege. Great if you're dealing with, say, hey, I'm a Greek, I just got the Hydra. Let me just take that Hydra from you. It's mine now. It belongs to me. If you're playing Rhea. That is really strong, right? In that situation. But very, very situational to use the traitor god power. Her Behemoth, again, situational. Siege can be useful in certain scenarios, but moving that thing across the map can be annoying unless you're playing, unless you have the mobility, which you can get as Atlanteans, keep that in mind. But still, situational. Same with Dionysus, Hermes, all that. Like, that's my point. Like, that's the thing about these gods. They're situational. They get the job done in those situations, but other times not so great. Thea, S tier. Like, without a doubt. Without a freaking doubt. First off, Dryads. Great unit that doesn't cost favor. That is a pretty important thing. They're not infantry, they're not human units, they're better than any human units. Obviously, they won't stand up to heroes, but the fact they don't cost favor, even if you're limited in how many you can construct, is a pretty significant benefit. And they also train pretty damn fast, so also a significant benefit. So Thea gets a fairly strong mark from that. Also, flying range unit. Still slow, expensive, all the problems that come from range units, but damn, really good myth unit. And unlike the ground range myth units, the fact that it's flying means you can run away. A lot of enemies that would really hurt you can't really hurt you. Obviously, ranged heroes, and even Greek heroes who all have now a ranged attack can be really strong, but just keep in mind. So keep in mind those limitations, but significantly better from my perspective than any other ranged myth unit in the game. Helios buffs your siege, gives you mobility on the battlefield. Really solid from that perspective. Has a pretty strong, solid myth unit that you can use. So I would highly recommend Helios as an A-tier god. Just no real complaints. Good on defense, good on offense. Great in particular that it buffs the siege. Also helps that his myth unit is actually very, very strong. Probably one of the best tier 4 myth units that is available in the game, if not the very, very best. Either that or potentially fire giants or some others. Maybe the Fafnir dragon with all the downsides that come with the Fafnir dragon. Don't worry, we'll get to that in just a moment. Atlas. So Atlas is a bit of a tricky one. On one hand, his god power is absurdly strong, and you gotta keep that in balance, right? Because these are balanced between myth units, god powers, and upgrades. His upgrades are defense-oriented, which can be useful, especially when your opponent may have, a lot of siege in the late game, especially if you're dealing with Egyptians. Siege towers are not a joke to deal with. May be really powerful and difficult to deal with from that particular perspective, if you're being attacked by that, and so Atlas helps you out. His myth unit, I don't know, I'm not necessarily so sold on his myth unit. Can be decent, but it's just that it's not decent. It's not ridiculous as a myth unit. It's a flying ground unit. It's bizarre, really, but can help you out in large-scale fights, but some limitations do apply. Implode, however, can literally win you the game. Like, oh, a massive enemy army is approaching me. Let me just use his god power. And the way Implode works, it's going to be very difficult for an enemy to actually get out of the radius of that, so you may just win the game flat out there with that particular god power. I think, it's a situational perspective with Atlas. It is really, really good when you do have it, when you do use it, right? But you might also end up wasting it, so just keep that in mind. I think I'm going to go with a B tier over there. for him. And then finally, Hecate, who probably should have Helios's myth units. But yeah, Tartarian Gate, really strong offensive ability or area denial ability, so it can help you out to map control. Her myth units are pretty strong, and she gives you myth unit HP regeneration. Now, if you have Oceanus, it's not necessarily as great, but if you don't have Oceanus for whatever reason, she can be really, really good to you. So I think she's an A tier. Like, it's hard to argue otherwise from my particular perspective. And that's the Atlantean gods. That leaves the Norse. And don't worry, we'll also have Freyr's gods over here as well. Just gotta add them. So finally, we get to the Norse. For Seti, I think he's an easy D tier. Healing Spring can be a useful ability, especially now that you can reuse it. So that healing that he does grant you is strong, undeniably so. However, Cave Trolls in multiplayer, not in campaign where obviously different rules apply. Cave Trolls can be amazing in large-scale battles, but for 1v1, not team games. For team games, I'd probably put Forseti a lot higher just because of how overpowered Cave Trolls are at the moment. Maybe they need a nerf on their Rock Throw ability, because that thing demolishes units. But Healing Spring helps you out. Cave Troll, not necessarily so great in 1v1. They're just vulnerable. That's the thing. That's kind of the problem. Can't do a ton of damage. So if you end up in a long game, yeah, you might want to use them, but it's very, very, very situational with him. Heimdall, S tier. No discussion on this one. He is one of them. Like, the Odin Heimdall Rush is a ridiculously powerful ability because you remove the enemy defenses and you have a myth unit that buffs all other units around it by a freaking lot. There's no discussion. His god power is amazing. His unit is amazing. He just gets the job done. There's nothing more that I need to mention about Heimdall. Those two things are enough to elevate the hell out of this guy in an enormous way. Uller, I think it's an interesting one because he's only available for Freyr, so I would say he's an A tier in that particular context because he's only available to one particular major god. He absolutely is an A tier given that context. If he was available for more gods, maybe it would be different. He gives you a Hellfort in tier 2, which you can either use defensively or offensively. He gives you a powerful archer in tier 2, myth unit archer in tier 2. And I gotta say, Draugrs, pretty big fan of those, really. And they feel like a tier 2 unit. Like, one of the things that I kind of dislike, like Medusa, Manticores, and all that, they're higher tier units, right? They don't give you the flexibility I say Centaurs give you, but the Hellfort ability is freaking strong. Like, and the fact that you can instantly grow from tier 2 to tier 3 to higher tiers just because you get that Hellfort, which, by the way, counts as a proper Hellfort, and it automatically builds as well. It takes time, so you can assign villagers, it gets faster, but it's a fairly cheap god power to begin with. Yeah, Uller is not a bad choice. Freya, situational, like C tier. Not worthless. Well, her god power, I would say, is very worthless. You can harass the enemy villagers with it, but yeah, I'm gonna say her god power is kind of one of the most worthless in the game. However, big point. Valkyries, great unit. If you're going with Norse and you're looking to raid enemy, in particular, if you're playing Odin, you're looking to put pressure on the enemy, you're looking to raid enemy, having a cavalry myth unit that's pretty decent combat and heals as well is not really a bad choice. And she gives you a cavalry benefit as well. So don't underestimate the particular power that she gives you. Skadi, D tier. Like, my problem with Skadi is Frost Giants, not as good as other myth units that you can get. Like, if she was a tier 2 god, yeah, I would say so. Her freezing ability can stop the enemy there in their tracks, but it's not like it's going to give you the ability of just obliterating them. It may give you the ability of going in and destroying their entire economy. Like, you don't want to use her freeze ability, like, just freeze an army and then, oh, I'm going to attack that army. That is a waste of time. It does last a good amount of time, but again, situational, very, very situational. And that's kind of the thing with Forseti, with Prometheus. Just situations where they can work, like Leto and Fa, who are pretty damn worthless. Still, Bragi, B tier. Like, the boars, not necessarily great, but the upgrades Bragi has, pretty solid. His god power, pretty damn solid. No discussion on either of those subjects. So, like, just buffing your entire army and being able to use that repeatedly with flaming weapons, really good. Gets the job done. Gives you a good amount of power. May not be useful in every situation, but you do get a good amount of upgrades. They're useful. You get a good amount of combat ability for him, for your entire army, or your humans, importantly. Yeah, pretty solid over there. Aegir. Now, how do I feel about Aegir? Well, on one hand, Aegir's unit is a really solid tank. Like, rock giants, very solid units, take a hell of a beating so they can support their entire army. His god power, while it's not the most damaging ability, it does hurt a lot in a fight. It's gonna really support you in that fight. So I would say, like, yeah, it's hard to argue otherwise. Aegir is pretty damn strong. Would you want to pick him every single time? Maybe not. Like, unlike Ullr versus Freya, yeah. I would say he's kind of like B tier. Like, Ullr is something you almost always want as Freyr. Aegir you could go without, but don't underestimate the power that he gives you. Njord over here. I might have to get more space over here in the A tier because I'm just gonna start adding too many over there. So Njord, his god power, it's better. Don't underestimate the walking trees, especially now that you can control them. He does have a good amount of benefits that he does give you upgrades that are available to him. And he has mountain giants, which have become extremely powerful with the Jotun upgrade. So yeah, I would say he's an A tier. Like, Njord just gets the job done. Don't ignore one thing about the Jarls, though. You can make them better against Myth units, but they're not going to be immune to the special attack of Myth units. So keep that aspect in mind. Okay. And now we have the tier 4 gods. Tier. Yeah, I'm going to say it. For a tier 4 god, tier is pretty crap. Like, yeah. His units, he does get those wolves. Okay. Like, compared to some of the other shit that you get in tier 4 from the Norse, including freaking fire giants, yeah, I'm gonna have to say that his wolves, not really that great. They can do a lot of damage if they're in a big pack, but they kind of die pretty damn quickly. So, just pretty disappointing in that respect from my personal perspective. Okay, we do still have Vidar, Baldur, and Hel. Hel itself. Vidar is an S tier god, like, no discussion on it. Like, if you're, like, keep in mind, the alternative that Freyr has is really good as well, but Vidar's ability, like, his god ability is absurd, does a ton of damage. Fafnir dragons do a ton of damage. Yes, you give your opponent gold if you lose one of them. That's kind of the downside of it, really. You can get healing as Freyr, though. Keep that aspect in mind. So just bear in mind if you're going to go with Fafnirs, you may want to pick that up one way or another. But Vidar, he does give you some very significant combat power. His god power is ridiculously strong. It is in a line, and it does a lot of damage on an explosion, but damn, that level of damage. You can wipe out an entire army or a significant chunk of an enemy base. That is really strong. Baldur. Where would I put Baldur except in S tier? Just gonna say it. Like, I don't think there's any kind of discussion on this subject. Like, Ragnarok might be a bit too strong right now. Like, how strong is it? Well, let me just say it like this. If you've played your upgrade game correctly, like if you get a bunch of upgrades for infantry, get armory upgrades, and then get Baldur, you can flat out win the game with Heroes of Ragnarok. So if you have enough money in the bank to start building villagers, or if you're about to lose the game and it's like, oh, I just got to tier 4, let me use them. Now, you got to be a bit careful. A well-timed enemy god power can wipe out your massive army of villagers or Hero of Ragnarok. Heroes of Ragnarok and you'll lose the game on that. But damn, those things are powerful. Powerful against myth units, powerful in combat. Get a bunch of upgrades for these guys. Yeah, Ragnarok is a bit absurd right now. Finally, Hel. Where would I put Hel? It's a tricky one. On one hand, the upgrade she gives you, really powerful. Like, being able to train myth units pretty much instantly, almost unsurpassed in the game. The fact she buffs all of the giants and makes them all available, well, mountain giants, frost giants, all that. But the fact that she makes those giants available and makes them stronger, combined with the upgrades you can get otherwise, like Jotuns with Hel, yeah, that's crazy. The Nidhogg, pretty powerful unit, though can die pretty quickly in Retold. Don't underestimate. Like, if the enemy has anti-air or ranged anti-myth unit capability, and quite a lot of them do, the Greeks do, like all of them do, can die pretty quickly. So, situational. I wouldn't necessarily put Hel as an S tier. I think she has a lot of things going for her in that respect, but I would say she's an A tier. Really good, really strong, gets a lot of things done, sure. But, you know, Nidhogg can either range from being extremely overpowered to being downright useless, because it depends on what capability the enemy has. And, you know, Son of Osiris kind of has the same problem. Son of Osiris is a lot harder to kill in a lot of ways, even if he's on foot, because, one, he's a lot freaking smaller than the Nidhogg, even if he's not flying. And, yeah, the Nidhogg, pretty sure you can't regenerate the HP of that thing, so if the enemy can counter you, he'll hard counter you, in that respect. On the flip side, the myth unit benefit, really good. Really, really good. Undeniably so. And so that is my minor god tier list for Age of Mythology Retold. I'm sure a lot of people disagree. There's a lot of gods in A tier, but they actually do get the job done. I think it says quite a bit about the game, from my perspective, that there's only a handful of gods that are not so great. But keep in mind this, with the exception of Letho and Fa, who are downright freaking useless as gods, and even then, Fa could have that capability that he does have in terms of like shifting sand, so undeniably so. And yeah, cheaper farms, sure, in a long game. But even those gods, yeah, Leto being the exception, even those gods can be good in certain situations. Team games, longer games, and all that. So there's always a place for them. Like, Skadi doesn't make the cut, I think, for instance, in a 1v1 game. But for a team game, very different affair. Very, very different affair. Her ability, pretty strong. Her farming capability for Norse, really good to help the Norse economy in a long game. But not the 1v1 game, which generally are far shorter than team games. Costin signing out. Stay tuned for more.